Well, how about that? 48 hours removed from the draft, and we get to see each other again, JB. What are we going to talk about?
I think we need to, I don't know, your weekend plans?
Yeah, weekend plans.
No,
I had a good weekend.
I'm
sure you had a good
weekend too, but we got to talk about the draft.
Let's talk about the draft.
It's on the table.
From the Stream Center, this is the Rondé Barber Show, sponsored by Advent Health and Renewal by Anderson. Here's your host, JB Buno, and Hall of Famer Rondé Barber.
Oh, Rondé Barber here with the so well-dressed JB Buno. I wore a pullover today because I wanted to offset your beautiful garnet jacket that you wore. We didn't draft a Florida State player. Why are you wearing that color?
I don't, I'm trying to get as close to the Bucs as I can get with this color, but you know what? Actually, yours, that's a little bit of a gold, like your Hall of Fame jacket there, a little bit.
A little greenish, but whatever. We'll take it. We'll take it.
I'm trying. Welcome into the Stream Center, folks. We are back with a special edition of the Rondé Barber Show. We just had to pull on Rondé's just bring him back. Yes. That's what we had to do. We had to bring him back from Lambeau. I mean, so you got back from Lambeau, Rondé. When was it? Yesterday? Today? When did you fly back?
Actually, I had
town?
a long weekend. So I left from Lambeau because I hosted the first round of the draft with Colleen Wolfe, and then went to my daughter's senior day at William & Mary. So she had her last game of college. So I bounced around to Virginia, and then now I'm back here. Actually played in Derek Brooks's golf tournament today. It was his 25th edition of the Derek Brooks Golf Classic. So it's all football for me right now.
Man,
it's all football right
well,
now.
That's good.
There was a lot of guys there, and there was a lot of talk about the draft. So I am primed to get this show going.
Let's get right into it then, because my goodness, I think if you polled all of the fans that filed into Raymond James Stadium on Thursday night for the Bucs draft party, which, by the way, we'll hit the applause button. The Bucs did. I know that Rondé was, he's big time. So
Otherwise occupied
in Green Bay, of course. But the Bucs did a phenomenal job putting on a great event. WFLA was proud to be a part of the event. But if you polled a lot of the attendees on the way in, you said, where are the Bucs going, offense or defense? I would probably guess at least 80% were going to say defense. And this is what happened when the Bucs made their selection.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Emeka, Egbuka.
The cannons go off, but really it's masking the sound underneath of just confusion from a lot of Bucs fans. I think I'm being kind, by the way, by calling it confusion, because there were some fans who were upset that the Bucs went wide receiver. But then as the hours went on, and more people wrapped their brains around it and realized who's in the wide receiver room now, Rondé.
Yes.
The pick began to make sense. So let's start with this question for you. Your initial gut reaction. They announce Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver, Ohio State, and your thoughts go where?
Well, so I was there, and I was sitting on the stage right before the pick came out because I had some interactions with the Bucs contingent that was on the in the crowd right in front of the stage. Actually, they had prime position. I don't know how the Bucs got prime position. Maybe because I was up there hosting the event, but they were front stage, right, and got to go down there, interacted with them a little bit. To a person. Everybody said defense. They wanted an edge rusher, whoever it was. They wanted a corner, whoever it was. And I can't say that I was going to disagree with them. I went into this draft thinking that the Bucs were looking for a linebacker first. Actually, the guy that I predicted the Bucs were going to pick at linebacker, Carson Schweisinger, went at the top of the second round. He was the first pick in the second round. That they were going to think about an edge rusher, and then they were going to get corner some point later in the round. But if you remember, there was a need on offense. There's one need on offense. The offensive line is set. You got two good running backs. You love your quarterback. I think everybody loves Baker Mayfield, right? Everybody loves a quarterback, right? The one position where there could be a need, and it's one of the positions, JB, when I think about football, that you can't have enough of them. Think about how when Mike Evans got hurt last year, Chris Godwin was already hurt at that point, and all of a sudden your wide receiver room looks really, really thin. So was wide receiver on the top of my mind? No, but it was probably 1B. And I'm not saying that I knew that they were going to make this pick. I didn't. I hadn't talked to Jason the 2 days prior to the draft.
Yeah. Okay. We're supposed to believe that? I mean, come on.
Look, but it makes sense why they went with this pick, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
This draft, and let's just start particularly about this draft, and I mean the quality of this draft, the type of players. Jason Light was on this show last week when we initiated this beautiful podcast and the beautiful stream sitter here at WFLA, and he said the value from picks about middle of the draft, so like 12 to 15, all the way down probably to the end of the second round were the same. So what that means is when we grade players, when scouts grade players, when GMs look at the grades on players, it's a numerical number. Let's say 8 is the top. Let's say 4 is a guy you don't even think about bringing in. All those guys that were picked from 15 to say 55 basically had the same grade, right? So then when you go into the draft with that mentality, you're able to pick the best player for your team when you get to 19. And at 19, the best player on the board that matched a need that they thought that they have. Obviously, they thought that they had a need because they drafted them, right? If they didn't think they had a need, they wouldn't have drafted them. So, like, people that give C grades to the Bucs first-round draft picks are idiots because they don't understand what the Bucs were actually looking for. Just because the world says that they should be drafting a defensive end or a cornerback or a linebacker doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the Bucs would agree with. And so when Emeka Egbuka was on the clock, or when they were on the clock, and Emeka Egbuka was there, Matthew Golden was also there, who JB, if you remember, was the guy that I thought they were going for with that pick if they picked a wide receiver. They said this is absolutely the guy that we want on our team. And why do you do that? First of all, you have Mike Evans, who's on the last year of his contract. He's going into his 12th football year, right? It's not like he's not young, right? He's still very productive. The 11,000-yard seasons speaks to the production that he still has. It still doesn't defeat the fact that he's 31 years old.
And could drop to a hammy at any point for a few weeks.
Exactly.
I mean, that's realistic.
You have McMillan, who you drafted last year. He's been somewhat he was a late riser at the end of his rookie year, right? He had a great 5-game stretch to end his rookie career, or end his rookie year. Chris Godwin was hurt all of last year, for the most part, all of last year. You have Sterling Shepard, you have Trey Palmer, you have a litany of guys that are not the quality of player that Emeka Egbuka is. And so you take this guy because you see a gap in your wide receiver room. And they fixed it. And I think it's a great pick. Now, am I going to give it an A+? Probably not, just because it doesn't really feel like the Cinderella pick, if you will. But it's a need pick. And they thought that they had a need there, and they did it. And I applaud them for having the courage to do it, knowing that those other 3 or 4 positions that they needed on defense were going to be there later because of the quality of the draft, the quality of the players from where they were picking at 19 to where they knew they were picking later in the third round or second or third round. We're going to find the players that they needed, and I think that's what they ultimately decided.
So you mentioned the draft grades or your draft grade. We'll come back to that because in a few minutes we're going to go pick by pick with Rondé and have him assign a draft grade starting with Egbuka in the first round. We'll get all the way down to another wide receiver in Tez Johnson from Oregon, who we'll be breaking all this down. But on the topic of grades, the media grades that came in on Egbuka as the first pick for the Bucs, or the round 1 pick for the Bucs. Here we go. You ready? USA Today, B. NFL.com, B+. Fox Sports, B+. CBS Sports, B-. So a lot of B's so far. And then you get to The Athletic, C-. Their lowest grade of any first-round draft selection. Sports Illustrated, B-. The 33rd team in A, and then Fan Grade in A. So I mean, The Athletic one, perhaps the outlier, but a draft pick grade is always going to come down to, look, how are you seeing it? Are you ranking the player, the fit, the value at that point in the draft? But look, there was a lot of shock at Raymond James Stadium amongst fans just because it was so widely assumed it was going to be defense. And then, it's very high profile to be a first-round pick, right? For it to be Egbuka, it just made some fans wonder, and I'll ask you this, Rondé, could they have gotten a wide receiver in the second, third, fourth round that could have supplemented a Mike Evans, a Chris Godwin, and maybe get a defensive stud in that first round? I understand what Jason Light is saying, that there's a bit of a plateau effect going on as the draft goes on, and that it made it sound as if there's really deep defensive value a little bit later on in the draft. But could it have been flipped? Could you have gotten this wide receiver or another wide receiver third, fourth round?
I think the way to look at this, JB, is that you wouldn't have gotten this wide receiver. Right. There's Ohio State history. Ohio State's had a bunch of great receivers, including the one that was the top pick last year in Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Guess who has more yards at Ohio State than Marvin Harrison? Emeka has most receptions in Ohio State history, second most yards in Ohio State history. He perennial big play threat from the slot, right? So when you talk about what you're getting to fit your specific need, he was the guy. So I think the Athletic, is that the one that gave him the C? Who did you say gave him the C?
Yeah, C- from the Athletic.
So those grades generally end up being because of the way that their experts rank their wide receivers, right? Most mock drafts that I saw, or position lists that I saw, Emeka was the second or third best wide receiver on the board. And so when I look at this, I'm sitting there saying, Jason Light and his group saw the second best in their mind wide receiver. I don't know where he was on their board. He was probably just below Tet, to be honest with you, Tet McMillan. But he was probably just below them, and they sat there and said, I can't believe that he's available here. We're going to take him. If he wasn't there, and Matthew Golden was still there from Texas, the receiver that I thought they were going to take, if he was there, they probably would have taken him too. Now, if anybody else below their grade level wasn't available, they may have passed and said, you know what, we have a better value in an edge guy or a corner or whoever. But their board said that if Egbuka was on the board at 19, we're taking him, right? It wasn't even a long process. I was there. The pick was in like that. So it wasn't like they were debating whether or not they were going to take a defensive player here or another wide receiver. They wanted this guy. And it's exactly who they got. And so when you take inventory of this later, obviously down the road, and we all will, because we're going to see him in the preseason on WFLA, the official Bucs station.
And shout out.
When I'm calling games with Chris Myers, and just in case y'all care to watch, we'll be talking about Emeka, right? And we'll be talking about how his development is going. And eventually he'll get to the regular season, and we'll see what his production is like. And then we'll be able to grade this. So these grades that come out now, who cares, man? Who cares? Does it really even matter? I mean, is it entertainment value that they have a C, or that somebody, that the 33rd team gave them an A? Who cares? The reality is they got the player that they wanted. And I think we can really stop the argument there, because I think he's a good football player. I watched him play Ohio State. He won a national championship last year. He's a good player.
It's a winner.
He's a good football player. And there was no red flags at all about this kid. And so I don't understand, people not getting why this pick was taken, but I do reflect on that reel you showed right before we started talking about this. The first word I heard was "what?"
Yeah.
What? So it just goes to show you that most people don't know what they don't know. That's all I'm gonna say.
That's where reading the tea leaves comes into play,
Absolutely.
right? So here's what's interesting. We have on the debut episode of the Rondé Barber Show last week, we have GM Jason Light on to give an exclusive week of interview for the NFL draft, because I didn't see anything else from Jason Light in the days ahead. So that was a pretty big deal for Rondé and Jason to be talking the week of the NFL draft. And a couple of things that are particularly noteworthy. One, Rondé, when you asked him his favorite pick, and he goes to Mike Evans.
Sure.
That's a very special, fond memory for Jason, obviously being his first pick as a general manager. And look, this is the first round wide receiver since Mike Evans that year. I believe 2014, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely.
So now it's just interesting looking back on the episode now because, to draft Egbuka, that's the second first round wide receiver in the Jason Light era for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Another thing, I'm going to bring in my producers over here. It was fun. We asked Jason Light, we said, hey, Jason, do you see anybody on the rotating, carousel of players in the center of your screen? Like, blink twice if you see a player that, and he goes, he said on the episode, Rondé, he says, there's a player that I don't know if I've seen him yet. So I'm asking our producers, did we have Egbuka in that carousel? No, I don't think we did. So he might have really liked Egbuka because we had a lot of defensive players on screen during that episode.
Yes.
And maybe he really did want the Ohio State wide receiver in that spot. Maybe he was trying to tell us all along, and we just missed it.
Right. We were trying to imprint him to draft one of the defensive players that you were putting there, but I think he had his eyes wide open, knowing that that's not who he wanted. I do know this.
We just checked, and Egbuka was not as a visual in the debut episode at all.
Right.
So
I know this. I knew. So you ask if I knew that they were targeting wide receiver, that it was possible.
You're Ronde Barber.
Well,
yeah.
I was in the building 2 or 3 weeks before the draft. I had to go in there, something that's related to the 50th anniversary of the Bucs organization, which is coming up, which is going to be a lot going on with that.
Oh yeah.
And I was in there. I was talking to Mike Greenberg and Mike Beal, and this kid walks through the front office, and he's going in to meet Jason Light. And it's Matthew Golden.
Oh, wow.
They have these 30 visits that every team has the ability to bring in 30 guys, draftable guys, to come in and meet with the team. You get extra, sit down time. You get to, kind of dig into their personality, whatnot. And he was there. And so in my mind, I was like, wasn't a defensive guy. And listen, they had 30 of them. I just saw one, but it was Matthew Golden. So at least in the back of my mind, I knew that they weren't just targeting only defensive players. And Matthew Golden is obviously going to be a first-round draft pick. He ran the fastest time at the combine.
Ultimately went to the Packers.
But you knew that, in my mind, I knew that they were going to think about receiver at some point in this draft. And so when I made that kind of prediction, it was because of that. It was because I saw a guy that was probably the third or fourth, top 2 or 3 or 4 wide receivers on everybody's board in our building, right? That was the insight that I had. Now I go back and look at most people's draft boards, and Egbuka was above him. So I think the Bucs probably believed that he was going to be gone, and when he wasn't gone, they picked him. You said a second ago, reading the tea leaves. Mm-hmm. The tea leaves in this pick tell you a couple of things, which we've already stated. 1, Mike Evans. 2, Chris Godwin. 3, McMillan, right? Those 3 players are the top 3 wide receivers in Tampa right now. So they believe something is up with one of them. So read the tea leaves in there.
So what you're getting at is that there's something we don't know about the current wide receiver room that could have maybe explains this pick in a way that we don't fully understand at this present moment.
100%.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
All right. So,
and it never hurts to have depth, because somebody's going to get hurt.
Right.
And you don't want production to trail when one of your star players gets hurt. That happened last year, right? You wonder why Atlanta a year ago drafted a quarterback in the first round after signing Kirk Cousins.
It's an interesting comp.
Right. You don't want that position to be your problem, right? Yep. You don't want wide receiver to be your problem if, let's say, Chris Godwin is not 100% back. If Mike Evans all of a sudden, gets hurt again and misses 4 weeks. If McMillan isn't more than just an outside receiver. This kid does everything well. Last year, he turned more into a blocker. He even admitted that he needs to get better at it, but he was already pretty good at it. He's a red zone threat. 15 of his 24 touchdowns in college were red zone touchdowns. Like, there's a reason you draft this kid. And I think we're ahead of the curve at thinking about this. You and I right now thinking about this, as opposed to the people that are probably listening to this show, because they're going to sit here. They're probably going to tune in and say, I bet you Rondé is going to say they should have drafted a defensive player. They did draft a bunch of defensive players. But let's go back. The value of the defensive players that they were going to get at 19 is the same that they were going to get later in the draft.
And that's what I want to ask you about next. Stream producer Garrett Phillips letting me know that the Bucs went 0-4 last year in the weeks after Chris Godwin's injury. So that might, stick in Jason Light and Todd Bowles' heads a bit. Yeah.
Perhaps.
So the strategy overall, because we're about to get into your draft grades, we're going to go pick by pick here because there's a lot more to the draft strategy, obviously, than Egbuka in the first round. But so generally the draft strategy, which, look, only Jason Light really would have known, is they maybe perhaps they were really targeting Egbuka in the first round, and then they were going to go defense afterwards with that plateau that we had talked about. So does that strategy sound right? And do you agree with that strategy if that was the case?
I think that was the strategy, and that's exactly the strategy that they went with. Look, do we need edge players? Yes. The best player in the draft, Abdul Carter, went early. Michael Williams went early. Shamar Stewart went early, right? James Pierce went a little bit later when the Falcons picked in. But those were the 4 guys that they would have drafted at 19 if they were there. It didn't play out that way. The draft never plays out like you think it's going to play out, right? Like if Shamar Stewart was there, they'd probably pick him, right? Why wouldn't they? They need that player, but he wasn't there. So I think their plan worked out the way that they thought it was going to work out, because you obviously get information, and I'm sure teams pay attention to mock drafts and see what other teams' needs could be. I mean, they have that information. We're in 25 years into the 21st century. You know what other people's thoughts are, and they played their board out like this, and I think they got the player that they wanted, to be quite honest.
All right, so let's get into our draft grades, and we'll put them up here on your screen. Our producers are going to help us out here as far as breaking this all down. So we've been talking a lot about Ohio State wide receiver Emeka Egbuka going 19 overall to the Bucs. Now, we're not asking Rondé here to give his grade of the player. It's at that pick position, which 19 overall to the Bucs in the first round, the fit with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and yes, the player, both on the field and off the field, Rondé, because we'll get in a little bit later on in the show. We're going to talk about about on the field and off the field.
We're going to talk about that.
So, Rondé Barber, your round 1 draft grade for Emeka Egbuka is?
I think it's an A. Because I think there's something that we don't believe that was there that is there in the Bucs decision making. I'd give him an A. I think he's a player that's going to help us immediately. He gives us the depth at the position, but also thinking towards the future at the position. You don't want to draft a rookie when both of those guys, when Mike Godwin or Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are done, and say, hey, you got to go replace these guys. Give them a year or two to kind of fit into the role, learn from these guys. And I think it's a perfect position. You just keep that ladder intact with good players at the position.
All right, round number 2, they go defense. It's cornerback Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. Versatile, can play safety and, of course, play corner. Right. That's how Todd Bowles likes his defensive backs. Now, this is a big deal. This is the highest defensive draft pick in this class. What do you think of Benjamin Morrison?
Benjamin Morrison, I love him, right? He's not getting my number, by the way. I'm just putting that out there right now.
You're going to LT him?
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ben. You're not getting it. You can go to 21 or whatever other number is close to there. Great player. And I know the reason they drafted this guy is because he takes the ball away. He is a productive football player. I'm going to give him a B on this grade, though, and there's only one reason to that. Is because he's coming off a pretty significant hip injury that he had also in high school, and so there's an injury concern. Now, did it affect him last year when they made their run into the CFP championship series? Not at all. The guy was an excellent football player. He does a lot of things good. He tackles well, and he's got this little bit of aggression to him that I think is really, really good. You guys saw his emotional reaction, right? I think everybody saw his. If you haven't, go look it up. His emotional reaction by getting drafted by the Bucs. It was funny. Todd Bowles goes, "All right, calm yourself down, man." But you just love the passion that this kid has, and it shows up on tape. He's big. He's 6 foot, almost 195 pounds. I think he's going to be a really, really good football player.
All right, now they double up at corner, and they pick out of Kansas State University in round 3 cornerback Jacob Parrish.
Yep.
2-year starter, ball skills, athleticism. He's inside, outside. They can move him around quite a bit also. So, again, another versatile defensive back. What do you think of Jacob Parrish?
Jacob Parrish, so it's funny because my daughter was dating a kid that went to Kansas State for a while, so I saw a lot of Kansas State football over the years. I was watching Will Howard, by the way. Will Howard was starting in Kansas State before he went to Ohio State. But, yeah, I saw this kid play when he was a freshman, Jacob Parrish. He's small. He's my size, right? He's 5'9.5" or 5'10", about 90 pounds. He's played mostly outside at Kansas State. Now, I think they project him to be somewhat of a slot guy. And you remember the Bucs are, they got Christian Izien. They have their second-round draft pick last year, who's probably going to be a safety. So there's going to be a fight for who's going to be the nickel. And this position is always one of the ones that I dive into the most when we get to the Bucs preseason, because Todd Bowles generally likes to play safeties, guys that have that safety physique, so to speak, and mentality to play nickel, because he needs them to tackle.
Yeah.
So one thing I do love about Jacob Parrish, even though he's not the biggest corner in this draft, is that he has a willingness to put his face on people. And I think when we start to look at him and evaluate him down the road during the preseason, we're going to say that that's going to be his advantage. And he has the ability to cover wide receivers. And there's a little bit of a detriment when you put a safety position in the slot when he has to cover wide receivers. But this kid, I'm also going to give him a B. I think he's going to be a productive player pretty quickly for us.
All right, and a pick that got Bucs fans excited because they were waiting for that edge guy. It comes in the form of David Walker out of Central Arkansas. Now, an FCS school, he goes to the Bucs in the 4th round. We need to get after the quarterback, Rondé. So your evaluation of Walker and his fit with the Bucs is
I'm going to
what?
give David Walker a B+ right now, because he was an FCS All-American, so championship conference, championship series All-American. This dude is on everybody's radar because he had 10.5 sacks last year, right? His pressure rate, Mike Green out of Marshall, who ended up going to Baltimore, had the highest pressure rate and led the nation in both divisions in sacks. This guy was right behind him in terms of production, in terms of affecting the quarterback. Certainly a need for the Bucs, right? I mean, you have Yaya Diaby, who didn't have a lot of sack production last year, but who affected the quarterback. And then you go out and get Hassan Reddick, who's proven, right? He's a proven guy. Behind that, there's not much there. Anthony Nelson, he's a pro's pro. He can win in certain situations. Chris Braswell, who we drafted last year in the 2nd round, still yet to show exactly what he's going to be. And you go get a guy, he's short. He's 6'1", 6'1.5", whatever he is. He's got a motor. He's got a myriad of pass rush skills. He helps us right away. That's why I like this pick.
All right, staying on defense, and the final defensive selection in the draft for the Bucs comes in the 5th round with defensive lineman, and you could make the argument he can play edge obviously too,
sure.
And that's being Elijah Roberts. Elijah Roberts coming to the Bucs out of SMU with the 157th pick. What do you make of Elijah?
So Elijah, I think, fits a role that Will Golston has filled for us over the past however many years. God, Will played here 10 years, right? The decade plus. Who's not on the team anymore, but this kid, he's inside outside guy. So just quick education, the Bucs run a 3-4 defense, right? 3 down linemen, 2 outside rushers, right? That's 3, and then 4 linebackers. 2 outside guys are linebackers, or 2 inside guys are linebackers. This guy can play all three of those interior positions. That's what Todd Bowles likes in his young defensive players. Yes, Vita Vea is the nose, right? But sometimes Vita comes out in rush situations. You need a guy that can go rush from that inside, the third inside position on the defensive line. This kid can do that, just like Will Golston can do that. He can play both of the interior defensive end positions. And in college, he spent a lot of time playing on the edge, getting on and being a designated rusher in pass situations. He's a big man, 6'5", dude. He's big, 6'5", 285. He had a great career at SMU. He helps us immediately. I would give this guy a B as well. He's gonna be a good player. Only a B really because not a lot of people gave him a lot of credit for what he did, and I never watched Central Arkansas SMU play, but I know for a fact that the guy was a productive player. They had him graded pretty high.
Elijah's a big dude. You know who's not a big dude? The round 7 selection at wide receiver out of Oregon, that being Tez Johnson. And my goodness, there are a lot of fans on social media with the Bucs fans that are excited about the value here just because of the special teams potential with Tez Johnson. Smaller guy. I mean, I think he's the lightest draft pick in NFL history, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so your make of look, Jason Light going small in the final round.
This was the one I probably had the biggest question mark over, and it's nothing against Tez. It's just that Tez is small and he's not very fast. Like, he did not run a great 40. He didn't run on his pro day to try to improve his 40. But yes, he's productive. He played at Oregon. He's best friends with Bucky. He's got a great story
with the Nix family.
Yeah, with the Bo Nix family. That story. I mean, you don't get emotional. I don't get emotional. I'm watching the draft. It's like guys are getting a chance to go, chase their dreams and make a lot of money. But that story was really, really cool. So could I give some deference to that? Yeah, I'll give some deference to the Tez Johnson's pick. But he's small, and I know that the Bucs last year brought in Cameron Johnson, the wide receiver out of where did Cameron Johnson go to school? I'm blanking on it now.
I got you.
He went to Barton, right? It was a tiny little school. He went to Barton to be our kick returner, to be that fifth receiver if he's up on Sundays. And you bring in Tez Johnson, and all of a sudden I'm saying now, well, what happened to Cam Johnson? Last year, Cam Johnson was he was the talk of the training camp. They couldn't wait for him to get on the field. Of course, he gets hurt. He doesn't get a chance to play. And so now they go out and draft Tez Johnson, and that's probably one of the position battles. So when we start prepping for preseason, we're going to talk about kick return battles. We're going to talk about Tez Johnson, you talk about Tez Johnson and Cam Johnson fighting it out for one spot on the team. So because I like Cam, I got to give this a C+.
Okay, C+ for Tez Johnson. And look, Tez, don't be hurt. I mean, if there's someone who was a little bit undersized at his position back in the day is over there.
That small.
Right. Okay. Let's be real. What's the height on Tez Johnson, boys? What do we got? I think is it 5? My goodness, we're checking on it, and again, I believe he's the lightest player ever selected in the NFL draft.
I'm sorry.
5'10",
yeah.
5'10", 165. Yeah, you're not that small.
Yeah,
no.
I'm not 165. The good thing about all this is, these grades mean nothing. They get to go to preseason and off-season OTAs and camp and go prove it. And go, we'll know more by the next time we have a show, because they'll have been on the grass and had a chance to interact with the players and go try to perform and try to learn what the NFL is all about, and then we'll be able to say, all right, maybe I was wrong about Tez Johnson.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be nice to be wrong about any of these guys on the upside, right, where they end up being better than we think they are. So that's my take. Look, I thought this was a good draft for the Bucs.
Yeah, because your overall draft grade is due next.
I thought this was they filled needs at every position that they wanted to. Obviously they still got work to do. They're signing free agents, including
Okay, we'll get into that.
Including Shedeur's brother Shiloh.
Yeah, because we have a couple to ask you about.
Right, but they I thought they did a good job in this draft. I'm giving them a B+. I trust that this front office makes the right decisions, especially in the draft. There's so many of their draft picks. I mean, I think they have the highest number of draft picks in the NFL that are still on their current roster, and that speaks a lot to the work that that Jason and Mike Beal and Rob McCartney and all the other scouts that work with this organization put into getting ready for that crazy weekend that is the NFL draft. And by the way, we should talk about Green Bay hosting a draft. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, real quick before I want to get to some undrafted free agents. How was Green Bay?
It was not unsurprisingly still cold. Thankfully, I was on the cover, and I got out of town before they had their big rainstorm on Friday. That didn't deter any of those fans from going out there. It was the most incredible sight I've ever seen, JB. I've never been in front of and talking on stage that many people. I mean, there's 205,000 people, I think they announced that day one of the draft, and they had a great setup. The draft stage was right behind. There's a convention center that they just built not too many years ago.
Yeah.
It's looking directly at the backside of Lambeau Field, and the sea of people from that stage all the way back out of probably 150 yards back to the stadium was immense. I shared some pictures on social media that kind of get a really good perspective of what the scene was like. But I'm just telling you, I've not been in awe of a scene very often. That one put me in awe. It was pretty awesome.
Did they give you a warm welcome? Did the Packers fans, the Cheeseheads, greet Rondé Barber with the love and respect that he deserves?
They did, especially after I told them I was only 1-4 in Lambeau Field.
Right.
They appreciated that.
Couple undrafted free agents before we move on and talk a little bit more about another high-profile draft pick in the NFL draft. Undrafted free agent pickups by the Bucs. Let's go from the lightest player in NFL history, by the way, NFL history, and Tez Johnson, to the heaviest player in Florida defensive tackle Desmond Watson. He is 6'6". Get this, folks. You ready? Pause for dramatic effect. 464 pounds.
That's like not possible. I remember when I I'll put it this way. I say not possible. I say not possible because I watched them play. I watched Florida play, and half the time you're like they're on defense, and you're like you can't not look at this guy. He's 450 pounds on the roster, but he weighed in at 464 pounds. That is an enormous human being. But the impossible part of it is actually kind of how agile he is. He's a big man. So I don't know necessarily, how he fits.
Oh, I do. I can tell you how he fits. You want me to tell you how he fits?
Yeah, he stops the push.
Stops the tush push.
Tush push.
Yeah,
without
him
a
and
doubt,
Vita?
he will. Without a doubt, he will.
At the bottom of the pile? Come on, that's must-see television. Scott Hansen on NFL Red Zone is going to say, look, we're not in the red zone right now, but we have a tush push against Desmond Watson and Vita Vea. He's going to cut away to it.
Oh, he's an impressive athlete for that size. I'll put it that way. Just being 6'6", 460, and being able to move the way he does, it's a credit to just obviously his strength and agility and whatnot. But it'll be fun. I'm going to say that's the word I'm going to use. It's going to be fun watching when they finally get padded up in training camp and watching if Todd Bowles decides to put 50 and whatever number Desmond is when he gets here on the field at the same time. That's going to be pretty scary.
We only got about 90 or so seconds left in this block, but for people keeping note at home, we did draft a Sanders, but not Shedeur Sanders.
We signed,
Shiloh.
not draft.
I'm sorry, excuse me. Apologies.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Keeping me on it.
Yes.
We signed as an undrafted free agent, Shiloh Sanders, safety out of Colorado. Real quick, your thoughts?
Well, we wouldn't be talking about him necessarily if he wasn't a Sanders, right?
Right.
He started 21 games, I think, in college. I think he had 1 interception, 1 sack. He wasn't very, very productive, but he's got a competitive DB room. It'll be interesting to see what this dude looks like when he finally gets here, because I don't have a take on him. I didn't see him play a lot, and then when he did, it's not like I wouldn't watch in Colorado looking for highlights of Shedeur Sanders. Now, does that mean he's not a player? I mean, his last name is Sanders. We know how good his dad was. Dad's the best corner in the history of football. So I'll be paying a close eye to him, as will I think a lot of people.
And shout out to Texas O-line, really center Jake Majors, who I keep hearing is a genius, apparently, like one of the smartest offensive linemen, period, that you'll really ever meet. But yeah, I mean, maybe he has the best chance to make the roster of all the undrafted free agents as the backup center.
Well, we don't currently have another center on the roster. Robert Hainsey went to Jacksonville, and he's probably going to be the starter there. So when I start talking about football, interior defense, offensive linemen, it's always about guys that can swing. They can play guard and both guard positions and center, and maybe kick out at tackle if you need to. This guy Jake Majors probably has some of that in him. He has the ability to learn all three of those positions, and that's always value. But again, he played at Texas, right? He played with Quinn Ewers, played with Arch Manning. The guy played on a really good football team with an offensive coordinator and head coach who ask a lot of his offense. So it certainly gives him advantage, and get a chance. The best thing about college free agents, JB, you talk about whether you want to get drafted in the 6th or 7th round or be a college free agent. Sometimes getting the not drafted gives you a chance to go to a team that you want to go to. Right? It's not like the Bucs call him and say, "Hey, Jake, you're coming to Tampa." It's like, no, hey, Jake, we want you to come to Tampa, and then they have to sign a contract. Like, then his agent and whoever get involved, and they start talking about bringing him to Tampa. And he, at this point, gets to weigh in. He gets to say, you know what? No, I don't want to go to Tampa. I want to go to Green Bay where I get a chance to play. Like, you look at our roster and you look at center and you say Graham Barton's the only center on the roster. You know what? I'm going to go to Tampa, right? Yeah. Maybe I could find a way to make this roster and then get a chance to play in the NFL.
Advantageous for him, advantageous for us. Yeah, because we didn't have to waste a draft pick on a backup center, obviously, right? And then also he has a chance to really, maybe a really good chance of making the team.
Right. Like I said, he played a big program. That helps.
The Rondé Barber Show continues after this.
You're watching the Rondé Barber Show, sponsored by Renewal by Anderson, superior products, exceptional service, and by Advent Health. Whatever makes you feel whole, chase it. Here's Pro Football Hall of Famer and Buccaneers legend, Rondé Barber. And a dude who thinks the red zone's something you see your doctor about, JB Buno.
I mean,
wow, JV.
I mean,
if you're ever in the red zone and we're talking about doctors, I'm going to call your wife from here and just be like, hey, he's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what to make of that.
That one was pretty cold, though.
We're getting personal. I think every episode is going to get more personal. People are going to have to skip ahead to episode 40 and be like, man, guy's assaulting me back here. Folks,
it's all about love, JB. It's all for the love, man.
It's all about love. Oh. This is one of my favorite segments on the show. It's called Make It Make Sense, Rondé. And we're going to ask Rondé Barber to make sense of the big story that came out of the NFL draft in that Shedeur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado State, of course, son right there of the legend himself, Deion Sanders, prime time, falls not to round 2. Not to round 3, not to round 4. He falls to the 5th round, and the Cleveland Browns. He's going to Cleveland as a 5th round draft pick. Day 3 is when Shedeur was taken. Rondé, you had left Green Bay, and Shedeur was still on the board. And I'm sure you, like I and many others, were just waiting to see where he would end up. He ends up in Cleveland. What do you make of this, let's call it what it is, a free fall?
Yeah, free fall. I mean, I think going into this draft, if there was one thing that everybody at the draft was prepared to talk about, it was, where is Shedeur Sanders going to get drafted? At first, it was, is he going to get drafted in the 1st round and where, right? But as the reports continued to spill in, I was sitting there with my 2 co-hosts, and not shocked, but really just kind of eyes wide saying, this kid is not getting drafted in the first round. And at some point you just start looking at the draft, that who's remaining to pick, and you're just saying, they're not taking a quarterback. They're not taking a quarterback. Maybe they'll take a quarterback. I don't know. And then the New York Giants traded back into the first round, and you're like, oh, okay, here we go.
Yep. And then
Jackson Dart.
Our stream producer and I, Rhett, we were at Raymond James Stadium, and I said, oh, I just had this feeling. Right as Goodell came out, I looked at Rhett. I said, Rhett, it's going to be Jackson Dart. It's not going to, and lo and behold, it was.
Right.
But could anyone really have predicted Shedeur going as late as day 3, 5th round? And I want to know, in your opinion, as to why.
Yeah.
Because accurate passer, and yes, a lot has been made of perhaps his lack of mobility. Perhaps a lot has been made about him playing for his father and that being a disadvantage, because you have to be able to learn from somebody who isn't your father, other coaches and other figures in your life that will guide you through something as complex as an NFL or really college football playbook. What's your makeup? What's your take rather on his fall and why?
I think Shedeur's what he's went through, and good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, this kid might turn into a great player. We don't know that, right? He gets a chance to do it now that Cleveland finally took him in the 5th round. By the way, after they drafted a quarterback in the 3rd round, Dylan Gabriel, which is going to make for such an interesting dynamic. They had Joe Flacco, they got Kenny Pickett on that roster. Cleveland's going to have a lot of quarterback drama next year. Let's just start with that. But for him, I think it's somewhat of a cautionary tale about how you approach the draft, right? 2 years ago, I think everybody outside of Colorado would have agreed that he was the best quarterback on the board this year, right? There wasn't a lot of hype about this quarterback class, and even after last year's quarterback class, which was pretty good, right? You got 3 of the top 3 picks were quarterbacks, and then 5 more in the top 12, right? 5 total in the top 12. And this was going to be a letdown of a quarterback class. And then Cam Ward shoots to the top of, everybody's consciousness with the year that he had at Miami. And Shedeur all of a sudden became quarterback number 2. And then you start doing the evaluations of Shedeur. And I would gather to say not a lot of teams had his draft grade as high as everybody else said that he was going to get drafted. I'm pretty sure that the Bucs didn't have a 1st round grade on him. I don't think they had a 2nd round grade on him. And I think a lot of teams had that. So the need all of a sudden becomes, I'm a team and I need a quarterback, like the New York Giants. And I brought this up earlier because the New York Giants had that option, right? They had the guy that was expected to be the top pick in the draft 2 years ago this year, and they passed on him for a guy that had, kind of a flash in the pan year at Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin, right? Now, Jackson Dart's a talented guy, right? He's got some flaws. He got a lot of flaws, right? He's not like a step in and play right now player. And so, in my opinion, Shedeur's arrogance to this process is what made people shy away from him. Like, it felt like he was sabotaging himself. I don't know if he was trying to do it intentionally, thinking that he was going to be so high on everybody's board that he would, regardless of his antics, he would be the guy chosen. But to me, it feels like that's what teams saw, that he didn't want to be in Cleveland. He didn't want to go to, be a backup somewhere. He thought he was the best quarterback in the draft, and not a lot of teams thought he was the best quarterback. Obviously, none of the teams thought he was the best quarterback in the draft. So it doesn't matter like how other people rate you. This goes back to that conversation we had about Emeka, Egbuka. It doesn't matter what people outside of buildings think. And I say buildings, I mean team facilities, people making the decisions, the coaches, everybody that's putting a grade, an 8.0 grade or a 5.0 grade on a prospect. Those are the ones that make the decisions. And not enough people had a high enough grade on him to overcome some of his perceived weaknesses, right? And one of those weaknesses is the way that he carries himself, Right? He talks this game like he should be the best player in the draft. And again, he might be. I don't know. But right now, nobody thought he was, and that caused the slide. That caused the we don't want this headache slide. That caused the we're drafting a backup once you get past the second round, the third round. Why are we putting him? Why would we draft him now when we know we can get him later? Nobody else wants him. You could just see it. You could just see that nobody wants him. And I think the little bit of lack of humility that he took to this process hurt him. That's the only thing, because he can play, man. He high completion percentage. He won 9 games at Colorado this year. He can make any throw that you really kind of need him to. Does he have the strongest arm in the draft? No, but he can make the throws. He's a good football player. He should be on a team. But there was some sort of, collective whatever that said we don't want this guy on our team at that draft point. The fact that Cleveland drafted another quarterback and then drafted him, and then drafted him, I think tells you everything that you need to know.
How awkward is it to be passed up so many times in really what might be the most unprecedented free fall? I mean, people thought that Aaron Rodgers falling to the back end of the first round was a free fall, or even Josh Rosen several years ago falling to like the roughly 10th pick was a free fall.
Right.
This dude fell 5 rounds, and he was considered by many to be a first or second round tout, at least the draft analyst. So how awkward is it to walk into that organization now and not just be passed up by your team in the previous 4 rounds, but as you noted, be passed up by another quarterback? Dylan Gabriel wants a real chance to succeed in the NFL. Did it for a lot of different schools, including right here at UCF. So Shedeur has to come in here and know that he was passed on multiple times, including at his own position.
Let me look at the. You can probably tell me this. The number of so Shedeur, right? He was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He was the 6th quarterback taken, right, in the draft. Right? The 6th quarterback in most drafts doesn't end up being in the 5th round, right? So there's a confluence of things, certainly. The way that he addressed the way he dealt with the pre-draft process, the fact that he wasn't as highly rated as a player as everybody else thought he was, and then marry that with not a lot of teams needing a quarterback, a rookie quarterback on their roster, right? I think that all 3 of those factors played into this slide. Jalen Milroe getting drafted by Seattle in the 3rd round as a complete project. He is a project. Now, is he stupid athletic? Yes, he is a freak show of an athlete, and will add something that Shedeur does not have. He doesn't have that ability to run, get out of the pocket, do the Lamar Jackson type of stuff. Tyler Shough is who was drafted by one of our rivals in New Orleans. He's a big arm quarterback. He makes stupid decisions, but he's a big arm pocket quarterback. That's what they were looking for. They weren't looking for Shedeur. And I think that was the case the entire draft. And his value just kept dropping and dropping and dropping. And it is unprecedented. It's sad, but it sets him up. I'll tell you this, and I'm not trying to hammer on him, but it sets him up for a pretty good redemption story, right? He has that in his pocket now. Now, if he's smart, he uses it. Now, if he continues to use that bravado that kind of carried him through the draft and probably negatively carried him through the draft, he's going to struggle. He's going to struggle. The NFL does not care, man. There is zero sympathy vote in the NFL. Most people that are on your team want you to fail because you're taking their job, right? Most people on other teams would be glad if you failed because you're not taking their job. Right? It is unforgiving trying to make it in the NFL, and you have to approach it with a little bit of humility, a little bit of grace. And then just go work. If that was my advice to him would be that just go work. Shut up. Don't say anything about it, and just go put the play on film, and it'll be undeniable.
The Rondé Barber Show continues after this.
It's time for you to Ask Rondé, sponsored by Advent Health and Renewal by Anderson.
Welcome back to the Rondé Barber Show. It's time for you to ask Rondé, and boy, we had a great time with this at the Buccaneers draft party on Thursday night. Fans coming over to the WFLA booth, and they had a chance to ask Rondé Barber himself a question and a chance to be on this show. Let's go to James.
Hey, I'm James. Rondé, got a quick question for you. If you could do it all over again, which team would you rather be drafted to, or would you go with the Bucs?
Great question. You know what? Going into the draft, I had some notes I was writing down. I was like, the team you get drafted to matters. It probably matters more than anything, right? Because you get into a situation where you're either wanted or needed or whatever, and your lifestyle. Like, you go to Tampa is different than getting drafted by Green Bay, where I just was for a couple of days.
And cold.
It's like, I go to Tampa, I stay here all year. I go to Green Bay, I'm probably there for football season, and I come to Tampa or somewhere warm in the off season. So if I had to do all over again, there's probably only one other place I would have wanted to go, which would have been wherever my brother went, because that would have been a really cool story in 1997 if Tiki and I would have been on the same team. But to do it all over again, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I knew that I was right where I was supposed to be a couple years into my career, and I would not want it to be any different.
I'm looking here. So Tiki goes in the second, right? And then do the Giants have another selection? No, they didn't. Or did they?
They did. They had a pick after the Bucs in '97, but I went before them.
Right, you went before them. So the Giants didn't have the opportunity to bring that story to life.
Thank you, Rich McKay. Thank you, Tony Dungy.
Give me a curveball. If there's one team, obviously playing with your brother is a really cool story. Going to the Giants, being in a big market would have been fun. Is there any other team you ever think about, man, it would have been really cool to play for?
The Washington Redskins at the time.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason being?
I was a Redskins fan. I was a huge Darryl Green fan. I would have loved to be in a DB room with him. He was still playing when I got drafted. And I remember, it's funny, I forget where it was. It's probably in 98 or 99, right before he was getting ready to be done. And we were on the field, and I went up to him and was like, "Hey, Daryl, I'm Rondé Barber. I played at Virginia." He goes, "I know who you are, man." It's like, we started yapping it up and, shooting it. And he goes, "I'll give you one piece of advice." He said, "Don't get beat deep." I'm like, what? That's all you give me? Oh, I'm not as fast as you, Daryl.
The Rondé Barber Show. Episode 2 is in the books. You can find it, of course, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, but most of all on WFLA streaming platforms on Apple TV, Fire TV, Roku, also on WFLA.com and the WFLA app for Android and iPhone devices. Rondé breaking down the Bucs 2025 draft class. More episodes coming your way on your platform of choice. For Rondé Barber, I'm JB Buno. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you soon.